This is the story of our daughter Marcia, who graduated from high school in 1956 and attended the University of Washington in Seattle. She admired her sister Sharon's Japanese doll and showed her baby brother Roy a butterfly on a bush. Marcia met a handsome young man who was from the Philippines and whose parents were Swiss. He was studying the logging business at Washington. To his question, she answered, "Yes, I will marry you and become queen of your kingdom in the Philippines." So he was suddenly a part of the family. A fond goodbye from Terrell and Sharon, and they were on their way in his red chariot, clear across the United States and on to Switzerland to meet his relatives. They built a home on the plantation in the Philippines and started a family. Well, being so far away, it was 8 years before I could go to see them. At long last I boarded a plane, Mount Shasta on the horizon. A magnificent 14,000-foot volcanic cone with extinct crater. Over Portland and the Willamette River. On to Mount St. Helens in its quiet majesty with Mount Adams. Then Mount Rainier and St. Helens, but no whisper of the power that she was to unleash. We winged our way over icy peaks toward Alaska. Deep ravines, frozen lakes, 14,500 feet mountain cirques, with glaciers flowing into the Pacific on the horizon. Over islands and winding channels in the Alaskan fjords. The main passage for both boats and planes into Anchorage. It was a long, blind flight across to Japan with cloud below, but finally arrived at my father's house in Kobe, Japan, a fine mansion which had been bought by Kobe University and dedicated in honor of my father, who was a professor there for 60 years, the Roy Smith House, large enough to house my father and another foreign university professor and his family. The garden was exceptionally beautiful, in Japanese style. Stone lanterns, and azaleas in bloom. A fish pond with stepping stone bridge. And a Japanese maple aflame. Leaving Japan, I flew past beautiful Mount Fuji and south across the East China Sea, past Taiwan, Formosa, to the Philippines. Manila. Daughter Marcia, her husband John, and Keith, a cousin, met us at the airport in their Beechcraft Musketeer four-seater, and we were soon on our way flying straight south over water all the way to the southernmost tip of the southernmost island, Basilan, to an area known as Mangal, at the 6th-degree parallel, almost on the equator. The clouds were gorgeous, passing through lush islands on the left, mountain peaks, rich rice fields in a massive spider web. Towering clouds mirrored in the ocean. Coral reefs off Luzon. Islands ringed with white sand beaches. And ocean water so clear that the shadow of the island extended to the ocean floor. In our tiny plane, to the mountainous island across from Zamboanga on what might be called a mainland. And now we approach Johnny's plantation, 2,500 acres of jungle that he and his father had cleared, red roofing on their homes, to plant 800 acres of coconut trees in straight rows. We banked to the left and approached the village and the airstrip running up the side of the mountain, the better to stop one way and the better to take off downhill. Below us, the red roof of the parents' home in a white horseshoe driveway made entirely of white coral. Now the other side, and another look at the bumpy runway. Well, we're down and greeted by a welcoming orchestra made up of volunteers from the 300-man workforce on this plantation. First to the big house to meet the Bolsterleys, a fantastic house of Philippine mahogany high off the ground, polished wood floors and wood paneling, a porch at the far end looking out to the ocean. When I arrived, my grandchildren gave me a demonstration of how they could run and drop on their knees and slide on that beautiful polished floor. A sumptuous meal with linen napkins, tablecloth, homemade bread and fancy dishes. I don't know why I had expected half primitive, roughing it style living. Mr. and Mrs. Bolsterley spoke very proper English, Swiss, German, and a local dialect, Characano. Then to Marcia's new house, this with shiny tile floor and mahogany beams and walls. It was quite an experience to meet our grandchildren, even harder for them as they kept asking, "Who is the visitor?" in a strange accent. But they were regular kids with regular interests. Brian on his swing, Alan in his car, and an entirely unrehearsed concert on the native musical instruments. Our daughter fitted into the tropical scene, and she put her artistic talents into bits of shells and driftwood. We walked to the beach through an arbor of palms and bougainvillea. There was a beach house with fresh water tank to shower, a dock for small ocean-going vessels. I was surprised to learn that boats came only about twice a year to take on loads of lumber, copra, rubber, hemp, vanilla, pepper, coffee, produced by the Bolsterly Plantation. Being on an island, the only transportation to the rest of the Philippines was by plane. The grandchildren had grown up like fish and still spend all of their spare time surfing here in Santa Barbara. The beach was not all sand. Some stretches were strange trees and roots, which tolerate salt water. From Marcia's house, we look up the waterway which winds through the village. Note the thatched roofs in the distance. And now brought closer by telephoto, this is where the coconuts are harvested. Copra, coconut drying hut. I was to learn that the Philippines is the largest exporter of coconuts, raising enough to give 2 nuts a year to every man, woman, and child in the world. Have you received your 2 coconuts? Here the workers are breaking open the nuts, pouring out the milk, and tossing them into a hot bed to dry. Millions call the coconut palm the tree of life. And truly, this strange palm is by far the most useful of all God's trees. It provides not only material to build an entire house, but most of the furnishings too. Chairs, beds, mattresses, carpets, brooms, cups, saucers, even soap and toothbrushes. Here the coconut white meat is separated and shipped, some for candies, cakes and pies, but the vast bulk, 3,500,000 tons per year, called copra, is processed for its oil, shampoos, soaps, shaving cream, toothpaste, lubricants, paints, synthetic rubber, ice cream. The residue after removing the oil is a rich cattle fodder. The husk provides fibers called coir and is woven into strong twine and rope. Upholstery padding. Volkswagen uses this fiber covered with rubber latex in auto cushions. And here, coffee beans with Father Bolsterly in the picture. A rubber tree. The sap is collected in coconut shells and poured into vats where sheets of rubber coagulate with acid, dried, pressed, and cured in a smokehouse, and wrapped into bundles, pressed into cubes of raw rubber for shipment. If you look closely, you can see the boxes in which this is pressed. Johnny has a busy office in charge of 300 men here, 800 acres in coconuts, 1,100 acres in rubber, 300 acres in coffee, 100 in pepper, 100,000 board feet, lumber cut per month, vanilla, hemp, 31 miles of roads to maintain on the plantation, and 300 men means 300 women, hundreds of huts, homes to build, If the family keeps a garden in a neat area, the crew will maintain the house. 600 men and women mean 600 to 1,000 children and lots of clothes to wash. The road in the distance provides a dam to hold back some of the water in the channel. You can see that in the distance there in the picture. This is the laundry area and a place to clean fish as well. The boys peddle water from the local pump. Foremen are responsible for work crews, and wives keep order at home. Some kids grow up and start new families. Johnny was responsible for the lives of 1,200 or more souls, provide food, shelter, churches, Catholic, Protestant, and Muslim, doctors, school. Sunday is the big trading day. Outrigger canoes come from the islands we have seen on the horizon of our pictures, bringing fish and vegetables. Mountain people have walked in from above, bringing bananas and handwork. But there has been a real enmity between the water people and the mountain people, with deadly clashes. So it has become necessary to have a militia and a patrol. All firearms and weapons must be checked in on arrival and are held until departure. The market is a popular place on trading day. Dried fish, happy faces, and boys selling Tarzan bubblegum. Well, mischief is the heart of every boy. You can see it in their eyes. A shark hangs as a boy poses. The women rest, while fish split open and dried are sold. What is so interesting? Marcia says she is a real witch and throws hexes on the townspeople. I better not take her picture, she will hex me. So I set my camera on my hip and shot as I wheeled around. And sure enough, I've been hexed ever since. The barber shop, this is the Christian one. There was also a Muslim shop. I was told that the Christians were afraid the Muslim barber might cut their ears off, and vice versa. Fancy transportation, a jeepney bus, which ran from plantation to plantation around the island. The Bolsterleys had bought virgin jungle and cleared the trees for their lumber value. This magnificent Dow tree was saved. Note Mr. Bolsterley standing there at its base. Fantastic root veins provide stability. They curve like enormous sails billowing in the wind. Johnny was developing another plantation on an island 150 miles out to sea toward Borneo, Tawi Tawi. He flew me to it across a volcano, its top in a cloud. over a village, most of which was built over water. This provides excellent access to the ocean people. A tiny island below, and another with houses well into the water with walkways to shore. The floors in the houses are open slats, so housekeeping is not a chore. Just let it fall through. Now over Tawi Tawi. The settlement to our left, coconut palms already planted. But the major operation, logging roads into the jungle. A clearing and lumbering operation on its way. Dao, Gijo, Apatong, Philippine mahogany. I'd never heard of some of these woods. And the logs transported across to a loading where ships can pick up the logs. We approach the village and a taxi into town, in the plane of course, to be greeted by women and children. Where are the men? They are all at work. This is the hut where Marsh's cousin and his family are in charge. We went into the jungle by jeep and watched two men on high scaffolding chop from opposite sides. If you look very carefully where those pieces have been chopped out, you'll be able to find the men, although on that scaffolding. And they then drop the tree to be sectioned by gasoline chainsaws. Some sections were hauled to the mill to be cut for building locally. Other sections were hauled to the ship channel, which we saw from the air. 27,000 board feet of lumber was cut and shipped per month. Some loaded by ramp, but most hoisted on board from the water. This lumber is hardwood and so heavy it will not float. Look carefully, you'll see steel drums serving as floats. We're on the island Tawi Tawi at Lapid Lapid village. Across the water we can see the village of Tihi Tihi on the island of Sanga Sanga. The names reminded me of Walla Walla, Washington. After my stay at these plantations, Johnny flew me to the mainland. Zamboanga, a town which was used as a rehabilitation center for servicemen after MacArthur's victories in World War II. Coffee shops on the boardwalk and fancy outrigger canoes for fishermen and vacationers. Like other places in the world, boys will be boys, and I found this group of boys scraping mud balls off the wall of a shopkeeper who didn't like mud balls on his wall. A carriage, please, to the airport, and a flight home. Now, back in Santa Barbara, Silvio Di Loreto is presenting our daughter Marcia with a special commendation for her volunteer work at Valley Verde. Her son, daughter, and two grandchildren live here in Santa Barbara.